He shot the wrong black woman. She was an FBI agent, and he paid dearly for it. The shot rang out before anyone could process what was happening. The sharp crack of a gun echoed through the sleepy morning air of Edgefield, South Carolina, shattering the calm of the small town strip mall. Samantha Price stumbled backward, her hand gripping her shoulder where blood now soaked through her gray hoodie. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just looked forward, right into the eyes of the man who'd pulled the trigger. Officer Wade Mercer's face went pale. She wasn't the woman he thought she was. And in that instant, he knew he had made a terrible mistake. People froze outside the diner, cars stopped in the middle of the lot. A mother across the parking lot pulled her child behind her car. The silence that followed the gunshot was somehow louder than the sound itself. "Drop the weapon," shouted a voice, young, firm, full of authority. It wasn't another cop. It was Samantha, bleeding, standing, and aiming a badge. With a shaky hand, she pulled back her jacket to reveal a gold badge clipped to her belt, now stained with her own blood. FBI. "I'm Agent Samantha Price," she said, her voice strong despite the pain. "You just shot a federal agent." Wade's hands trembled. He lowered his gun like it weighed 100 pounds, his mouth moving, but no sound coming out. "That can't be," he whispered. A man in his 30s wearing a U.S. Marine Corps hoodie rushed forward, stepping between Samantha and Wade. "Ma'am, stay with me," he said, gripping her arm gently, assessing the wound. "I'm a combat medic. You're gonna be okay." Inside the diner, moments before, everything had been normal. Samantha sat quietly at the corner booth, sipping coffee, reviewing case files on her tablet. She had been in town undercover, investigating a cross-state human trafficking ring rumored to involve local law enforcement. She hadn't revealed her identity to anyone. That was the whole point. She didn't count on being profiled or shot. But Wade had been itching for action. A call had come through dispatch. Suspicious black female, possibly armed, casing shops. A lie. Another Karen-type false report. He responded fast enough to skip procedure. No warning. No ID check. Just the color of her skin and a gut full of bias. And now it had blown up in his face. Paramedics arrived within minutes. Samantha was loaded into the ambulance, conscious but silent. She winced as the EMT pressed gauze to her shoulder. The pain was real, but not as deep as the betrayal. From the stretcher, she looked back toward Wade Mercer, who stood surrounded by his own colleagues, pale and sweating. Their eyes locked again. "You better lawyer up," she muttered under her breath. Back at Edgefield Police Department, the mood was tense. Word spread fast. A cop shot a black woman, an FBI agent, no less. Internal Affairs was already en route. Reporters were starting to gather outside. Captain Lillian Brooke, a middle-aged white woman with a hard stare and a reputation for discipline, stormed into the bullpen. "Where the hell is Mercer?" she barked. No one answered. In the interrogation room, Wade sat alone, hands clasped, still in uniform, blood splattered on his sleeve. Across from him sat a man in a black suit and wire-rimmed glasses, Agent Leo Trammell, Internal Affairs from D.C. "You didn't ask her name. You didn't give a warning. You didn't call for backup. You shot someone because she looked suspicious," Leo said coldly. "Tell me, Officer Mercer, does suspicious always look like a black woman with a laptop?" Wade looked up, eyes wild. "She matched the description. You weren't there." "She matched your prejudice," Leo said. The room went quiet. In the hospital, Samantha sat propped up in bed, IV in one arm, bandage over her shoulder. Her phone buzzed, a message from her field office. "Do not speak publicly. We're sending legal." She sighed. She'd been undercover for 4 months. 4 months of building trust, gathering intel, avoiding attention. One bullet blew all of it. A knock on the door. A young black nurse peeked in. "Agent Price, you have visitors." 4 men in Marine uniforms walked in, the same medic from earlier at the front. They all saluted. "We wanted to thank you," the medic said. "You helped expose that trafficking ring in Augusta. Our sister was one of the girls. You didn't know it, but you saved her." Samantha's eyes welled. She had known this job was personal, but hearing that, it cut through everything, the pain, the anger, even the injustice. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. As they left, the youngest Marine turned back. "We'll be outside when the press shows up," he said. "If anyone needs reminding who you are." Samantha smiled, weak but genuine. And in that moment, Wade Mercer, still in holding, facing suspension and possible charges, had no idea how big this storm would become. He didn't just shoot a federal agent, he shot a hero, and the country was about to find out. The hospital room was quiet, except for the soft beeping of machines and the muted voices from the hallway. Samantha Price sat upright in bed, her gaze locked on the ceiling tiles above. She wasn't thinking about the bullet or the painkillers coursing through her system. She was thinking about the mission, what had just been shattered by one man's bias. Her burner phone buzzed on the bedside table. She snatched it up and answered with a curt, "Price. You're off the grid. Don't check out under your name. A transport team is coming. You've been compromised," said the voice of her handler, Special Agent Callum Ross. "I'm not leaving town," she replied flatly. "You took a bullet in public. Your face is on every news station. Wade Mercer made damn sure of that. I have a witness in deep cover. We're days away from bringing down half the network." There was a pause on the line. "Samantha, I'm ordering you to stand down." "No," she said, her voice quiet but certain. "I'm finishing this. And if I have to do it bleeding, I'll do it bleeding." She hung up before he could reply. Across town, Officer Wade Mercer sat in a cramped office with his union rep, his right leg bouncing uncontrollably. Sweat soaked through his undershirt. He kept staring at the blank wall, trying to replay what had happened, but no matter how he twisted it, it always ended the same way. He pulled the trigger too soon. The rep, Douglas Rankin, a grizzled former cop turned damage control expert, leaned in. "You need to stop talking. Stop apologizing. This isn't about guilt. It's about strategy." "I shot a federal agent, Doug." "Yeah, and you're gonna tell the board you feared for your life, that you were misled by a false tip, that the lighting was poor. The subject matched a description from dispatch. We've used it all before." Wade looked sick. "You don't understand. She looked me in the eye before she dropped that badge." Doug's eyes narrowed. "You want to survive this? Then you better stop acting like a rookie with a conscience. The department's already considering throwing you under the bus. This is about your pension, your career, your future." Wade nodded slowly, but his stomach twisted tighter. Meanwhile, back at Edgefield Memorial, Samantha changed into plain clothes. Black jeans, a dark hoodie to cover the bandage, sunglasses to hide her identity. Her partner from Quantico, Marcus LeBlanc, had slipped in through a back entrance with a flash drive and coffee. "You look like hell," Marcus said, placing the cup on the table. "You should see the other guy," she smirked. He handed her the drive. "This is everything we pulled off Mercer's cruiser dash cam. You're lucky the mic was on. The whole confrontation is on tape. No warning, no commands. Just you standing there and then the shot." She took the drive, her fingers tightening around it. "What about the call that brought him there?" Marcus hesitated. "We traced it. Came from a payphone. No CCTV. But get this. There was a second call 20 minutes earlier from the same number. reporting a drug deal in the diner parking lot. The caller used the name Crystal Wallace. Samantha froze. Crystal Wallace is the name of the girl we've been trying to find, the witness. Exactly. Either she was reaching out or someone used her name to bait us. Samantha's heart sank. If Crystal had tried to contact them and now she'd gone dark, that meant someone was onto her. We have to find her before they do. Back at Edgefield PD, the chief was in damage control mode. Press conferences were scheduled, lawyers were involved, and political pressure was mounting. News vans were already camped outside the building. Reporters yelled questions. Is Officer Mercer suspended? Why was there no body cam footage? Is it true the victim was an undercover agent? Inside the precinct, Captain Brooke confronted Mercer privately. Do you have any idea what you've done? She hissed. I followed a tip. You shot a federal agent, Wade, a black woman sitting alone drinking coffee. The whole country is watching now. I've got D.C. breathing down my neck, state officials panicking, and civil rights groups already staging protests. He didn't reply. I'm putting you on unpaid leave, effective immediately. Wait, I need to explain. No. You need to get out of my station before this becomes a bigger mess than it already is. That night, Samantha and Marcus drove to the abandoned factory where Crystal had last been seen in a sting-op months prior. Her intel had helped them start the case. If someone was trying to lure Samantha into the open using Crystal's name, that meant the ring was scared. The lot was empty. But inside the office trailer, Marcus found something chilling. A burner phone duct-taped under a table, still warm, and next to it a wallet, Crystal's, blood on the corner. Samantha clenched her fists. She was here. Marcus scanned the area. This is a message. They know we're close. Samantha stepped out into the lot, staring at the road ahead. And for the first time in a long time, her hands trembled. This wasn't just a case anymore. Now it was personal. The rain was relentless. It hammered the windshield of the black SUV as Samantha and Marcus sat in the parking lot of a rundown motel on the outskirts of Charleston. The wipers swiped in a steady rhythm, but neither of them spoke. Inside room 117 was the man who had placed the call that got Samantha shot. And if their informant was right, he wasn't just any player. He was linked to the same trafficking network they'd been chasing for nearly a year. Only now he was slipping up, getting sloppy. That made him dangerous. You good? Marcus asked, glancing at her from the driver's seat. Samantha nodded, but her jaw was tight. The pain meds had worn off, and the wound in her shoulder throbbed like a second heartbeat. Still, she couldn't afford to wait. Crystal's wallet, the staged trap, whoever was behind it was closing in. Marcus handed her a wire mic. You sure you want to do this yourself? She clipped it under her hoodie. He'll recognize you. He doesn't know me. I'll be fine. He frowned. You were shot 2 days ago. And I still outrun every suit in Quantico. Relax, she got out before he could say anything else, stepping into the downpour and heading for the motel room. Her hair, pulled back in a tight bun, quickly became slick with rain. The man who answered the door was in his 50s, white, bald, with a cigarette tucked behind one ear. He looked her up and down and snorted. You the one asking about Wallace? That's right, she said coolly. I heard you might have answers. He stepped aside and let her in. The room smelled like mildew and bleach. A portable heater buzzed in the corner. Samantha kept her back near the door, eyes scanning everything. 1 suitcase, 2 coffee cups, no visible weapons. So, what's your interest in Crystal? The man asked, flopping into the worn armchair. She's family. He raised an eyebrow. She's not black. She's still family. He chuckled, took out a burner phone, and tossed it onto the table. That's her last contact, texts, calls, But I warn you, if she's still breathing, it's because someone wants her that way. You go looking, you better be ready to pay for what you find." Samantha stared at the phone, then back at him. "Why give it to me?" "Because someone else already paid me to set you up." Silence. The man smiled. "Yeah, I made the call that night. Told your cop you were a threat in the diner parking lot. Used Crystal's name like they told me to. Thought it was just a scare job, maybe get you rattled. But when he shot you, I knew I was in deep." Samantha's eyes darkened. "Who paid you?" He leaned back and laced his fingers behind his head. "I don't give names, not unless I get something in return." Samantha pulled out a sealed envelope and slid it across the table. He opened it, counted quickly, then laughed. "This is cute. You really think I'd talk for $5,000? "No," she said calmly, pulling out her phone. "But I figured I'd record your confession and let the feds connect the dots." His face dropped. Samantha took a step closer. "You want to deal? Then give me something worth not putting you in prison today." He hesitated, then finally sighed. "Check the storage unit at Hawthorne and 5th, Unit 3118. They kept files there, photos, schedules, drop points. If Crystal's still alive, that place will tell you where she was headed." Back in the SUV, Marcus listened through the wire and had already started the car by the time she walked out. "What happened in there?" he asked. "He admitted to the call," she said, "and he gave us a lead, Hawthorne and 5th. As they drove, Marcus called it in for backup, but Samantha stared out the window, her thoughts elsewhere. Wade Mercer. He wasn't just a cop with an itchy trigger finger anymore. Someone had used him as a pawn, and pawns could still be flipped. At the storage facility, the padlock on Unit 318 was broken. Someone had been there recently. Samantha and Marcus swept the room. Dusty boxes, a stack of burner phones, dozens of driver's licenses from missing girls. And in the back, taped to the wall, a photo. Crystal, looking scared, with a date scribbled in the corner, June 14th. 2 days away. "She's alive," Marcus said softly. Samantha stared at the photo, her pulse quickening. "We have 48 hours. Then a sound, tires screeching outside. Marcus peeked through the slats. "We've got company." A blacked-out SUV skidded into the lot, and 3 men jumped out, 2 carrying rifles, 1 with a walkie-talkie. "They found us." The 2 agents drew their weapons and ducked behind the stacks. Gunfire erupted. Samantha moved with precision, taking out 1 man as he entered, while Marcus disabled another at the door. The 3rd fled, but not before tossing something inside. "Grenade!" Marcus shouted. They dove for cover as the flashbang exploded, shattering shelves and slamming them with a wave of light and heat. Everything went silent. As the ringing in their ears subsided, Marcus dragged Samantha outside, both coughing from the smoke. Whoever was trying to bury this case had resources, and time was running out. The early morning light filtered through the cracked windows of the safe house, casting long shadows across the floor. Samantha sat at the kitchen table, one hand cradling a mug of black coffee, the other flipping through the photographs they'd recovered from the storage unit. Her eyes lingered on Crystal's terrified face. That date, June 14th, burned into her brain like a countdown she couldn't stop. Marcus came in, towel over his neck, sweat from his morning run still clinging to him. "She looks scared," he said, nodding toward the photo in her hand. "She was scared," Samantha replied quietly. "And whoever's doing this wants her alive for something. That gives us a sliver of time." Marcus sat down across from her. "And it gives us leverage." Samantha raised an eyebrow. "Wade Mercer," he continued, "the man who shot you. He's been in the wind since Internal Affairs launched their preliminary probe, but rumor is he's hiding in plain sight, protected." "By who?" Marcus slid a thin file across the table. Deputy Chief Eldridge, old school, politically connected, and neck-deep in corruption. Mercer was one of his golden boys. Samantha's jaw tensed. If Eldridge's name is in this, we're dealing with more than one rogue cop. We're dealing with a system. She looked at Marcus and nodded. Then it's time to shake it. 2 hours later, they were sitting in the back of a diner in Columbia, South Carolina, a place Eldridge's name had popped up in connection with local business owners, mostly silent partnerships, some shell companies. One waitress, a former informant of Marcus's, slipped them a napkin with a name, Jerome Beck. A fixer, Marcus explained, cleans dirty money for dirty men. If Eldridge is protecting Mercer, Beck will know where he is. They found Jerome that evening at a cigar lounge downtown, surrounded by smoke and flanked by 2 bodyguards. He didn't flinch when they approached, but when Samantha lined in and showed him the photo of Crystal, something shifted in his eyes. "I don't know her," he said, voice flat. Samantha leaned in closer. "That's funny, because her phone last pinged in the same warehouse your men own in Spartanburg." Jerome's lips curled, not into a smile, but something between annoyance and surprise. "You got 5 seconds to walk away, Agent." Samantha didn't move. Marcus did. He slammed Beck's head into the table, quick and brutal, drawing gasps from the room. The bodyguards pulled weapons, but Samantha was faster, her gun already aimed. "Try me," she growled. "We're FBI. You shoot, you don't walk out." The room stilled. Jerome spat blood onto the floor and looked up, groaning. "You're insane." "No," Samantha said coldly. "I'm just out of patience." Beck stared at her, then finally spoke. "Warehouse isn't just a holding place. They're prepping a transfer. Girls get moved from there to offshore. But not Crystal." "Why not?" "Because she fought back, broke one guy's jaw with a chair leg. They put her in solitary. There's rumors she's some kind of undercover." Samantha's heart pounded. "She's still there?" Beck nodded. "But not for long. They're cleaning house after what you found. She's scheduled for extraction tonight." Back in the SUV, Samantha stared at the dashboard, mind racing. "We don't have enough manpower," Marcus said. "Then we go rogue," she said without hesitation. "We call in favors. People we trust. No paperwork. No time." They called Agent Diana Reyes, former hostage negotiator, turned private security, then retired field agent Kyle Maddox, who owed Marcus his life from a sting operation gone sideways. Within 2 hours, they had 5 people prepped, 2 vehicles, and a clear plan. Breach the Spartanburg facility, find Crystal, and extract. That night, under the cover of darkness, they arrived. The warehouse sat alone in a stretch of industrial no man's land, wrapped in fencing and cameras. Reyes cut the power. Maddox took out the sentries with tranquilizer darts. Samantha and Marcus moved fast, sweeping room by room. Downstairs, they found makeshift cells, girls barely in their 20s, some crying, others dazed. But Crystal wasn't there. Samantha clenched her jaw. "She's here. She has to be." Then a muffled sound, hollow banging. From a small locked room near the back, Marcus kicked it in. Crystal sat on the floor, wrists bruised but defiant. She looked up, eyes locking with Samantha's, and her breath caught. "You," she whispered. "I knew you'd come." Samantha crouched beside her, quickly untying her. "We've got you. You're safe now." "No," Crystal shook her head. "You don't understand. They're not just cops. There's someone bigger. Someone funding this whole thing." "Who?" Crystal opened her mouth to speak. And then gunshots ripped through the corridor. Samantha shoved Crystal to the ground as Marcus returned fire. The exit plan was collapsing fast. "Back door!" Reyes shouted through comms. They sprinted. Marcus covered them, barely dodging a shot that clipped the wall beside his head. Samantha dragged Crystal into the van and slammed the door shut. They drove off into the night, bullets chasing them down the highway. Crystal curled into herself in the back seat, breathing hard. "They won't stop," she whispered. "They'll keep coming." Samantha met her eyes in the rearview mirror. "Then let them. This time we're ready." The motel room smelled of bleach and desperation. Samantha paced the floor, her boots hitting the worn carpet with each step, while Marcus stood near the door, gun holstered but still within reach. Crystal sat curled on the edge of the bed, wearing a borrowed hoodie and sweatpants, sipping from a paper cup of water with both hands shaking. "I told you," Crystal said, her voice cracking. "They're not just some rogue cops. They're someone bigger, someone pulling strings." "Who?" Samantha pressed. "We need names, Crystal. Anything that helps." Crystal looked up, eyes wide with fear and fury. "I heard them talk about a man named Quentin Ryland. He runs a private security firm, Ryland Strategic. But that's a front. He handles acquisitions, women, weapons, secrets. He's untouchable. They called him the Broker." Samantha froze. She knew the name. Ryland had surfaced in a dozen investigations over the years, whispers and fragments, but never anything they could make stick. He had powerful friends in Washington, offshore accounts, and the ability to disappear when things got too hot. Marcus crossed his arms. "If he's involved, this isn't just about corruption. This is trafficking, blackmail, maybe even espionage." Crystal nodded. "I saw files, not just women. Politicians, judges, law enforcement. Ryland's been collecting leverage on everyone." Samantha stepped back, the weight of it all sinking in. "And Mercer?" "He works for Ryland. He's not rogue, he's on assignment." Silence fell over the room. Marcus ran a hand over his beard. "Then we're not just dealing with a dirty cop. We're dealing with a war machine." They knew going through official channels was suicide. Someone would leak. Someone would bury the case. So Samantha took a breath, pulled out her encrypted phone, and made the most dangerous call of her career. It rang once. Then a voice answered. "You sure you want to open this door again, Caldwell?" "Jackson, I don't have time. I'm sending you files. I need your help, and I need you to bring her in." "You're talking about the director?" "Yes. Off record, no bureau. Just you, me, and whoever's left that we can trust." There was a long pause. "All right," Jackson replied. "Meet me in Atlanta. Midnight. Bring everything." Samantha turned to the others. "We're moving." That night, they drove in silence. Crystal sandwiched between Samantha and Marcus in the back seat of a black SUV. Rain fell in heavy sheets, blurring the edges of the highway. They reached the warehouse near Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport just before midnight. Jackson waited at the gate, tall, lean, grizzled by 20 years of Black Ops intelligence. His eyes swept over Crystal, then back to Samantha. "You weren't exaggerating." "I never do." Inside, they spread the files across a metal table. Photos, logs, names, times. Jackson's expression darkened. "This is a blueprint for a silent coup," he muttered. "Ryland's not just trafficking people. He's positioning pawns, judges in his pocket, cops on his payroll, and if this girl had been moved offshore—" "He shot me because I got too close," Samantha said. "And now he's going to wish he'd finished the job." Jackson raised an eyebrow. "You planning to hit him head on?" "Not just him. We hit the money, the files, the leverage. We tear down the network." Crystal stepped forward. "There's one more thing. I overheard them talking about a gathering. This Friday, at Ryland's private compound in Charleston. He's hosting donors, politicians, and brokers. Everything will be there. His real operation, Jackson leaned back. That's 2 days from now. It's our only shot. Marcus looked at Samantha. You thinking what I'm thinking? She nodded. We go in. Jackson didn't argue. He just said, then we need gear, surveillance, firepower, and backup. The kind that doesn't flinch. Later that night, as the others slept in the corner of the room, Samantha sat with Crystal under a hanging light. Why didn't you run when you had the chance? Samantha asked softly. Crystal looked down at her hands. Because if I ran, they'd just replace me with another girl, and she might not survive what I did. Samantha reached out and squeezed her hand. You're brave, you know that? I'm tired of being brave. I want to be safe. You will be, Samantha promised. But first, we end this. Outside, the storm cleared, but the real one was still coming. And this time, Samantha Caldwell wasn't just defending herself. She was coming for blood. The gates of Ryland's Charleston compound rose out of the mist like a fortress, flanked by motion-sensitive cameras and patrolling guards in sleek black uniforms. Samantha stood just beyond the tree line, crouched low behind brush, a fiber-optic camera in her hand. Her voice was low but sharp through the comms. We've got a quarter-mile between us and the inner perimeter. 2 towers. 1 guard dog patrol. Sensors on the east fence. Entry window is tight. Marcus responded from across the line. You sure about the route? Samantha glanced over at Crystal, who was gripping a folded blueprint. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice held. There's a drainage tunnel behind the generator. Leads under the kitchen service entrance. They don't patrol it. That's how they moved the girls. Marcus's voice turned grim. Copy that. Let's move. They split into 2 teams. Samantha led Crystal and Jackson through the tunnel while Marcus looped to the west gate with backup gear. The air inside the tunnel was damp and rank, filled with echoes of dripping water and distant hums from the generators above. Keep moving, Samantha whispered. Stay low. They emerged under the kitchen alcove, hidden in shadows. Samantha reached up, unscrewed the vent grating, and slowly crawled through. Inside, chefs bustled with trays of food, and servers flitted in and out, unaware of the storm brewing beneath their feet. Once inside, the group ditched their tactical gear and blended into the crowd. Samantha in a waiter's black suit, Crystal disguised as catering staff, and Jackson slipping into security black with a forged badge. The event was grand. Crystal chandeliers, high ceilings, soft jazz, and men in expensive suits laughing over glasses of bourbon. And there he was, Quentin Ryland, standing near the center of the room, tall, graying, with a smile like a viper's. He shook hands with a senator, whispered something to a CEO, and never once noticed the predator closing in on him. Samantha pressed her earpiece. We've got eyes on Ryland. Marcus's voice came back immediately. Files are in the East Wing, 3rd floor office. You've got maybe 20 minutes before they realize the cameras are looped. Copy, on the move. Samantha signaled Crystal and Jackson to break off. As she made her way upstairs, her gaze swept over the room, catching Mercer across the floor, chatting with the judge. He was still walking free, still smug, still untouchable, but not for long. Upstairs, the hallways were quieter. Samantha picked the lock on Ryland's office, slipped inside, and closed the door behind her. The room was opulent. Mahogany walls, vintage leather furniture, and a wall safe behind a painting of George Washington. She headed for the desk and pulled out the flash drive Jackson had given her. But just as she reached the computer, the door opened behind her. Mercer. Gun drawn. Well, well, he said, stepping in slowly. You just couldn't leave it alone, could you? Samantha didn't flinch. I told you I'd find out the truth. Mercer smiled. And now you've walked into your own grave. Shame. You were better than most. Not better. Just smarter, she said. Then Crystal emerged from behind the curtain, a fire extinguisher in hand. She swung it with everything she had. It hit Mercer square in the temple. He collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. Samantha caught her breath. Nice timing. I wasn't going to let him hurt anyone else, Crystal said, panting. They dragged him into the closet and locked it shut. Samantha turned to the computer, plugged in the drive, and began transferring files. Photos, payment records, transport logs, evidence that would take down not only Ryland, but dozens of powerful men and women who'd played dirty for too long. Downstairs, Jackson's voice came through. Samantha, we've got a problem. One of Ryland's men spotted Marcus. The alarm's going to trip any second. I need 5 minutes, she said. You've got 2. She pulled out her phone, started uploading files to an encrypted bureau server. The upload was at 38% when gunshots rang out from below. Screams followed. Crystal's eyes went wide. They're coming! Samantha turned, handed her the Drishammarai. Get out. Give this to Jackson. I'll hold them off. I'm not leaving you, Crystal whispered. You already saved me once. Now go! Reluctantly, Crystal bolted down the stairs. Samantha drew her weapon, crouched behind the desk as footsteps pounded the hallway. The door burst open, Ryland's top enforcer, flanked by 2 men in riot gear. She took the first shot before they could react. 1 down, 2 to go. The second lunged at her, but she rolled beneath the desk, kicked his knee sideways, then slammed his head into the oak frame. The third fired wild shots, tearing into the room. Samantha ducked behind a bookcase and flanked him, knocking the gun from his hands and pinning him with a chokehold until he passed out cold. She stood in the wreckage, heart racing. The upload beeped, complete. Outside, sirens screamed in the distance. Reinforcements were coming. She slipped out through a side corridor and rejoined Jackson and Crystal in the courtyard, just as black SUVs peeled into the compound. The bureau was here. But this time, on her side. Ryland stood at the top of the stairs, surrounded by chaos. Samantha stepped forward, dirty, bruised, but unbroken. You're under arrest for trafficking, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and attempted murder, she announced. Ryland stared at her, stunned. You're FBI? She showed her badge. Senior Special Agent Samantha Caldwell, and your empire just crumbled. The federal holding facility in Columbia, South Carolina, buzzed with tension. Inside a high-security interrogation room, Quentin Ryland sat shackled to a steel table, his designer suit rumpled, his confidence unraveling. Across from him sat Samantha Caldwell, now in full FBI dress blues. Her badge lay flat on the table, unmistakable. She wasn't just an agent. She was senior, respected, feared. Ryland smirked, though sweat had begun to bead along his temple. You really think this circus of yours will stick? He asked, voice dry. Samantha leaned in, calm but firm. Your friends aren't answering your calls anymore, Quentin. You're not the rainmaker anymore. You're the storm that just got caged. He chuckled, but it rang hollow. People like me don't stay in here long. Samantha opened a folder and laid out photo after photo. Images of the victims, financial records, text messages, surveillance stills from his compound. At the end of the row was a flash drive. This drive contains every dirty contract you ever signed, every payoff, every fake invoice used to funnel underage girls through your system, she said. We've got witnesses. Crystal gave a full statement. 2 of your guards flipped. Mercer's already crying to a DA. His face twitched at that last name. Mercer's a coward. Samantha's voice dropped. And you're a monster. But monsters don't scare me anymore. Outside the room, Crystal waited in a break area, sipping from a paper cup, hands trembling. Jackson stood beside her, trying to steady her breathing. You did great, he said. You saved lives. I just wanted to be free, Crystal whispered. That place. They made me feel like I was nothing. You are not nothing. You are the reason that man is in cuffs. As Ryland sat in silence inside the room, the door opened and another agent entered. Judge signed the order, the agent said to Samantha. No bail. Trial date's been expedited. Federal charges, life without parole, is on the table. Ryland's smirk vanished. His lips parted like he wanted to speak, but no words came. I told you there would be consequences, Samantha said. You just never believed you'd have to face them. She left the room, walking straight to Crystal. It's over, Samantha said gently. Crystal looked up at her, eyes glassy. You sure? For him, yes. For you, it's just beginning. We'll get you help, counseling, witness protection if needed. But this time you're not alone. Crystal hugged her, shaking. That night, the news broke across every major network. South Carolina power broker indicted on human trafficking charges. Ryland's face, once a symbol of philanthropy and power, now plastered the screen beside words like predator and federal indictment. But while the headlines buzzed, the real war moved deeper. Samantha sat in her apartment later that evening, reading through old files. For every Ryland taken down, there were 10 more hiding in shadow. Marcus called. Nice work, Caldwell, he said. You're a hero. Heroes don't get tired like this, she replied with a faint laugh. You're not tired. You're just getting started. She paused. You're right. Her phone buzzed. An encrypted message from Bureau Intel, a new name, a new network, another case. But before she dove back in, she turned toward the window, staring out into the city. Ryland thought he shot a scared black woman in a parking lot. What he did was wake the wrong one. And now the entire system that protected him was beginning to crack. The courtroom was packed. Camera crews lined the back wall, reporters scribbled notes with frantic energy, and every seat in the gallery was filled. The buzz in the room wasn't just about the trial, it was about who was on trial and who had brought him there. Samantha Caldwell stepped onto the witness stand, dressed not in her tactical field gear, but in a sharply cut charcoal gray suit. Her hair was pulled back tight, her voice calm, her eyes steady. Across the aisle, Quentin Ryland sat with his new legal team, no longer the A-list attorneys he once boasted, but a scrappy defense scrambling to build a case from the shreds of his former power. His once smug expression had withered into something more anxious, more bitter. The prosecution began its questioning. Special Agent Caldwell, the prosecutor said, can you explain how the operation first began? Samantha looked out over the courtroom. It started because of a mistake. A man shot me in a parking lot, believing I was just another target. He didn't know I was federal. He didn't know I was watching him. He didn't know I was trained. The room was silent. What he also didn't know, she continued, was that the system he used to cover his crimes had cracks. I simply followed the rot. The defense tried to rattle her during cross-examination. Agent Caldwell, you were undercover. Isn't it possible you misinterpreted some of the actions or documents you saw? I wasn't undercover when he shot me, she replied coldly. I was walking to my car. Murmurs rippled through the room. And yet, she added, voice sharper, he pointed a gun at me and pulled the trigger, because I'm a black woman. That wasn't about misinterpretation. That was about power and fear. The judge banged his gavel, but the point had landed. Over the course of 3 tense days, the trial unfolded. Witnesses came forward. Crystal, tearful but resolute, former security staff, a financial auditor who finally confessed to forging records. And then came the twist no one expected. As the defense prepared to rest their case, an anonymous witness was called, one who had contacted the prosecution in secret. When he took the stand, gasps echoed across the courtroom. It was Ryland's brother-in-law, a former partner, a man who once vouched for Quentin at charity events and public panels. Now he held up a stack of documents and told the jury everything. "I stayed quiet for years," he said, voice trembling. "But after he shot that agent, I couldn't anymore. I saw what he was becoming, what he'd already done." Ryland's face collapsed in on itself. Not rage, not defiance, just disbelief. The trial ended with a unanimous verdict, guilty on all counts: racketeering, attempted murder of a federal officer, trafficking, obstruction of justice. The sentence, life without parole. Outside the courthouse, the sky cracked open with spring sunlight. Samantha stepped down the stairs, surrounded by her team, her badge now shining on her hip. A reporter called out, "Agent Caldwell, any final thoughts?" She paused, looked directly at the camera. "I wasn't the only one he tried to silence. I was just the one who could fight back. But this case, this victory, it's not just about me. It's about every black woman who's ever been dismissed, disrespected, or endangered. It's about justice finally catching up." As the press swarmed and the city buzzed with the verdict, Samantha made her way back to her car, the same car she had been walking toward when Ryland tried to end her life. Now, with each step, she walked towards something else entirely: justice, change, accountability. And as she slid into the driver's seat, she whispered to herself, "You picked the wrong one." If this story moved you, if it made you think or made you feel something, then help us keep telling stories that matter. Subscribe, like, and share this video. Because when voices like Samantha's rise, the world starts to listen. Justice isn't just a name. It's a fight, and it's far from over.